Thanks for stopping by the channel. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you're checking out the bell icon down below there somewhere. Make sure you get notifications for when I'm putting out content. Took a couple of days off, and I'm back. In this video, the content's going to be brief but pointed. I'm going to be talking a little bit about President Joe Biden's comments about the measures he wants to take for gun control. Now, in a previous video, I spoke a little bit about his desire to strip away what he calls immunity from civil suits from gun manufacturers. And I juxtapose that with the fact that jab manufacturers are completely immune from any damages that their products might make. And we're basically forcing those products on people now to take part in civilized society, or as they deem civilized society. But today in particular, we're going to talk a little bit about the idea that President Biden has decided he wants to see the Justice Department draft model red flag legislation for states. Now, let that sink in. He knows that he cannot order red flag laws, if you will, into place here in the United States as a chief executive of the federal government. President Biden does not have the power to order red flag laws across the country. So he has to come up with a way to manipulate that into being. And so, like with a lot of things, what the federal government likes to do is they like to tie funding and financing of projects to the state's capitulation to their desires. And they, as I mentioned before, they did that with seatbelt laws back in the late 80s, where they began to force states at the point of the fiscal gun to enact seatbelt laws in order to maintain their highway funding. And that's really what we're probably looking at here going forward with the Biden administration. He's asked that the Justice Department look into a broad and sweeping red flag language that can be used by the states under the threat of losing that should we say, Mama's purse strings, Uncle Sam's purse strings being stripped away from them. Now, here's the problem with red flag legislation, okay? There are states that have enacted it, Maryland being one of them. And in a case from several years back, family members or law enforcement, I can't remember the whole story, but an individual was reported for being unstable. Law enforcement arrived on scene to remove the firearms from this man. And in the process, he was shot and killed. And people would say, well, see, that proves that the red flag law was needed because this man was clearly unstable. But I want you to understand, there was no due process with red flag. There is no due process, okay? All an individual in your family has to do, or all law enforcement has to do, is assert that you are dangerous. They just have to assert it. They don't have to prove it. They don't have to show that you are in any way, shape, or form actually dangerous. They just have to say you could be dangerous to yourself or others, and then they can get a court order to have your firearms removed from you without due process. No crime has been committed. No crime has been plotted or planned. There's no proof of a crime. There's no jury trial. There's no court hearing with you present. They just assert that you're dangerous, that you could be dangerous to others or yourself, and they can come and take your guns by the order of a court. And if you happen to survive that encounter, and I know that sounds radical, but just think about this. No due process at all. You're just treated like a criminal. End of story. And we're coming to take your guns. It's like the old they're coming to take us away, hee hee ha ha song from the 60s. And I can't even remember the name of the program that used to play those types of songs. But if you do happen to get through that, and you happen to be able to prove that you weren't a danger to yourself or to others, and that you're not some sort of mentally unstable freakazoid who's going to run around shooting up people in gun-free zones because, signs work, you still have to fight a battle to get your guns back, even though you haven't committed a crime. Literally thousands and thousands of dollars to hire an attorney and go to court and make an argument that you should be allowed to have your lawfully purchased, lawfully owned, constitutionally protected rights, constitutionally enshrined liberties to keep and bear arms, have that reinstated to you, even though you've done nothing wrong. And our ever so erudite president has said that no amendment to the Constitution is unlimited. So the First Amendment has limits, the Second Amendment has limits. So does the 14th Amendment have limits? Does the Fourth Amendment have limits? Where do these limits end, President Biden? Where do they end? And who gets to determine that they're done? Who gets to determine that they have limits and what those limits are? You say that these executive orders and these measures that you're taking are pro Second Amendment, but they're not. You want to, in the next 60 days, have the Justice Department draft basically legislation to hand over to the House of Representatives and the Senate of every state, or in the case of Nebraska, the unicameral. And you want to hand that over to them and say, you will pass this or else. That's what you want. That is not pro-Second Amendment. That is anti-Second Amendment. That's also infringing upon the state in a way that the federal government is not allowed to do according to the Constitution. And you can say that you're not trying to pass laws, but you're throwing your weight around. You're telling people, look here, I'm in charge, and you're going to do what I say. Like, if this happens, there will be no right for you to keep a gun in your house. Because all you need is some whacked out leftist Marxist family member to make a claim against you that you're a radical or that you're somehow dangerous because of your views. And they'll come and get your guns. And then if you argue with them, they'll take you away too. Red flag laws are dangerous. They're dangerous to law enforcement. They're dangerous to civilians. They're dangerous to innocent people who have done nothing wrong. And it is not going to prevent gun violence. What it's going to do is it's going to result in an increased conflagration of animosity towards law enforcement by the general public, by people who are pretty much pro-Second Amendment, pro-Constitution, because it's going to be used as a weapon against constitutionalists. It's going to be used as a weapon against traditionalists. That's what it's going to do. Look, if red flag laws worked, then every gun legislation that is passed, every firearms legislation measure that is passed would work, and there would be no more mass shootings because we have passed law after law after law after law about firearms. And gun violence continues to happen. And the only way to end gun violence is to remove guns from everybody, if at all possible. And the only way to do that is to fly over the United States with some sort of giant magnetized tool that will strip guns away from all people. As if by pulling it right out of the air or into the air. All of this legislation is not going to stop anybody at all from committing gun violence. In fact, what it's going to do is it's going to create more victims. It's going to create animosity between law enforcement and the people of the states, and it's going to put law enforcement in harm's way, and it's going to put innocent people in harm's way, and criminals are going to continue to have guns, and they're going to continue to victimize people because that's what criminals do. And the President of the United States, aided and abetted by the Vice President and others on the left, in this country are playing into the hands of a Marxist agenda and a criminal mentality. They are aiding and abetting criminals, and they're aiding and abetting a takeover of this nation by anti-traditionalists and anti-constitutionalists. We cannot allow this to happen. We have to fight this tooth and nail, peacefully and in the proper channels, but we have to fight this tooth and nail. This is not a pro-Constitution, pro-Bill of Rights president. And this certainly is not a pro-Second Amendment initiative. If there are limits on anything, President Biden, the Constitution limits you, not we the people. Until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.